Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Learn with MJ. Today's topic is the most important topic, that is the French Revolution. The French Revolution, which erupted in the year 1789, marked a turning point in the history of human struggle for freedom and equality. Thus put an end to the age of feudalism and ushered in a new order of society. So the French Revolution, which is erupted in the year 1789, and it became a very important turning point in the history of human struggle for freedom and equality. And also it created an end to the age of the feudalism, and it presented a new order of society. An outline of this revolution will explain to you the kind of turmoil that occurred in Europe. So we can look that this revolution brought about far-reaching changes in not only the French society but also in other societies throughout the Europe. Even the countries in other continents such as India were also influenced by the ideas generated during this revolution. The main ideas like liberty, fraternity and equality, which now form a part of the preamble to the Constitution of India, owe their origin to the French Revolution. Now we can look some of the major aspects of this revolution. The basic picture of the French society. The French society was divided into feudal estates. The structure of the feudal French society comprised three estates. Estates are defined as a system of stratification found in the feudal European societies whereby one section or estate is distinguished from the other in terms of status, privileges and restrictions according to that estate. So the first estate consisted of the clergy, which was stratified into higher clergy such as the cardinal, the archbishops, the bishops and the abbots. So they lived a very luxury life and gave very little attention to religion. In fact, some of them preferred the life of politics to religion. They spent much of their time in wasteful activities like drinking, gambling, etc. In comparison to the higher clergy, the lower parish priests were overworked and poverty-stricken. Next is the second estate. It consisted of the nobility. There were two kinds of nobles, the nobles of the sword and the nobles of the robe. The nobles of the sword were big landlords. They were the protectors of the people in principle, but in reality, they led a life of a parasite, living off the hard work of the peasants. They led the life of a pomp and show and were nothing more than high-born wastrels, that is, they spent extravagantly and did not work themselves. They can be compared to the erstwhile zamindaris in India. The nobles of the robe were nobles not by birth, by title. They were the magistrates and judges. Among these nobles, some were very progressive and liberal, as they had moved in their positions from common citizens who belonged to the third estate. The third estate comprised the rest of the society and included the peasants, the merchants, the artisans and others. So there was a vast difference between the condition of the peasants and that of the clergy and the nobility. The peasants worked hard day and night but were overloaded with so many taxes that they lived a hand-to-mouth existence. They produced the food on which the whole society depended. Yet they could barely survive due to failure of any kind of protection from the government. The king, in order to maintain the goodwill of the other two estates, the clergy and the nobility, continued to exploit the poor. The poor peasants had no power against him, while the clergy and the nobility kept on pampering and flattering the king. As compared to the peasants, the condition of the middle classes, also known as the bourgeois, comprising the merchants, bankers, lawyers, manufacturers, etc., was much better. These classes too belonged to the third estate, but the poverty of the state, which led to a price rise during 1720 to 1789, instead of adversely affecting them, helped them. They derived the profit from this rise, and the fact that French trade had improved enormously also helped the commercial classes to a great extent. Thus, this class was rich and secure, but it had no social prestige as compared with the high prestige of the members of the first and the second estates. In spite of controlling trade, industries, banking, etc., the bourgeois had no power to influence the court or administration. The other two estates looked them down upon, and the king paid very little attention to them. Thus, gaining political power became a necessity for them. The clergy and the nobility both constituted only 2% of the population, but they owned about 35% of the land. The peasants, who formed 80% of the population, owned only 30% of the land. The first two estates paid almost no taxes to the government. The peasantry, on the other hand, was burdened with taxes of various kinds. It paid taxes to the church, the feudal lord, taxed in the form of income tax, poll tax, and land tax to the state. Thus, you can see how much burdened and poverty-stricken the peasants had become at this time. They were virtually carrying the burden of the first two estates on their shoulders. On top of it, all the prices had generally risen by about 65% during the period 1720 to 1789. Now we can look some of the political aspects of the French society. Like in all absolute monarchies, the theory of the divine right of king was followed in France too. For about 200 years, the kings of the Bourbon dynasty ruled France. Under this rule of the king, the ordinary people had no personal rights. They only served the king and his nobles in various capacities. The king's word was law, and no trials were required to arrest a person on the king's orders. Laws too were different in different regions, giving rise to confusion and